Thank you so much for coming down. Really appreciate it. Insane in the Membrane podcast.
Insane in the Membrane is back for another live podcast recording on Sunday the 23rd of February.
I found that through humour, people open up and we have a laugh, and I really appreciate you coming down and doing this.
This is an intimate live show with comedian Rich Wilson and very special surprise guest in front of a small audience at the Pleasance, Islington. In fact, you are so close to the comedians, you could probably lick them.
We can have a laugh while we do it. I think that's what I'm trying to show with the podcast.
January's a struggle for us all, so put yourself something to look forward to in February. Insane in the Membrane live at the Pleasance, Sunday, Feb 23rd at 7:30pm. Just £5. Nearest tube, Caledonian Road, Piccadilly Line. Dead easy, no excuses.
You did great, Rich.
Thanks, Bob. You
Didn't
did as well.
You do great.
Thank you.
Click the link in the show description for this episode on your podcast app or go to pleasance.co.uk.
What do we do now?
I don't know. I think that's it. Thanks for coming. Yeah. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome to another edition of your favourite podcast, Insane in the Membrane.
Insane in the Membrane.
Hello. Welcome again, Brainers. I don't know. Shall we call you that? I don't know. We'll find a nickname. We'll get there in the end. We must find something to bring us all together. Welcome again to another edition. It's nice to have you on board. And what an episode this is. This week, I was joined by the comedy legend that is Mr. David Baddiel, and I can't tell you how much of a fan I have been of this man since seeing him for the first time ever on the Merry Whitehouse experience way back with Rob Newman, Steve Punt and Hugh Dennis. And he said Les Dennis then, it's a different show. And we put the word out and we're like, would you like to come on the podcast? We'd love to have you on. And he came back and said, yeah. So he came down to Comedy Central. Thanks again to Comedy Central for having us on and letting us use the room. Thank you to producer Paul for once again making it sound delicious. And I spent the day I just immersed myself in David Baddiel stuff so as not to fanboy him when he turned up. And I think I kept a lid on it. I think I was all right. And stay listening after the podcast ends. That's after the end music. You'll hear a little bit of extra banter, a little bit of an extra bit that was at the end of the conversation that we nearly missed because we nearly stopped recording. But stay listening to the end. And there's a little treat for you. So without further ado, please welcome David Baddiel.
Are we recording now?
Yeah, just on.
Are we recording?
Yeah.
Before we start, I just want to say something about my mental health coming here. So my mental health is always a little bit in and out, to be honest with you. Depends a bit on the day. And for listeners who cannot see, and we're indoors anyway, so I don't know why I said that. But anyway, it's a horrible day. It's really grim outside. Yes. It's quite late. It's sort of 5 o'clock. It's dark. It's not to get here. I have to go not past the nicest part of Camden. And I agreed to do another podcast at home. The bloke who's turning up to my house, he's an old mate of mine. He does a podcast called The Unexplained, which is about eerie, ghostly stuff. But he's doing a sort of spin-off from that about visiting strange and eerie and strange weird places. So he said to me, you've been to Auschwitz.
Oh, wow.
And I said, yeah. He said, do you want to talk on my podcast about your time at Auschwitz? I thought, yeah. So now I'm doing this, and then I'm going back to do that. And my only hope is later on in the evening I'm playing seven-a-side football. So hopefully that'll lift me out of the terrible despair that all this will got me into. But there we go. But no, I'm fine. I'm all right.
You're all right.
I've got a cup of tea. I'm fine.
So you're going...
So I'm going on tour, yeah.
Yes. And you talk about Auschwitz. How did you feel? I've never been.
That wasn't where my tour was.
I was going to say, it's an interesting place to start.
Gigs are terrible there. Yeah, there's no comedy clubs or anything around there. So you have to do it in Polish anyway. I wanted to actually... I'm doing a documentary. I've done it. We're screening it tomorrow on Holocaust denial.
Right.
I was going to say it's about the history. It's not really. It's about it's a sort of weird TV essay about Holocaust denial and about the fact that it's growing online and about how you confront these people and my own issues with like, should you confront them, should you platform them, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we couldn't work out what to do as a publicity shot. Right? And I noticed that if you go to Poland, right, every time you go into a place, as you come out of it, that place will be crossed out. Right. So I thought that would be quite a good publicity shot because it'll be like Auschwitz crossed out. It's like Holocaust denial.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's called Auschwitz. in Polish. I hadn't thought about that. And no one will know what that is in British television. I think, why is he standing next to a weird word crossed out?
It says Ofsted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it seems to be about Ofsted in our. Baddiel's doing an important programme about that.
I find it baffling. I was talking to Ian Stone about this, about the anti-Semitism.
Very old mate of mine. I've known him since I was 5.
Really?
Yeah, he went to my primary school.
Wow.
In fact, I think he's a comedian because of me.
I
think Ian would agree with that.
Okay.
I think about 4 or 5 years after I sort of hit quite big, Ian thought, wait a minute, that's just a bloke I know.
Yeah,
that's just a bloke I can do that. And he can. He's good.
He's very good.
Yeah,
one of the best.
Yeah.
But we were in Nottingham, and we had a couple of drinks in the hotel after the gig, and I just said, because I don't know. All I see is what's in the news, so I don't really know. Like all this talk about the Labour Party being anti-Semite and anti-Semitism, and I said to Ian, I said, where does this come from? This, I know you probably don't want to talk about this. You talk about this on many other things.
I have, yeah.
But I just find why is there so much hatred towards one group of people?
That's a big subject you've started with.
Yeah, I know,
Rich.
but it just.
I don't want to talk about it only not because I'm uncomfortable, and in fact the opposite of that, because I might be writing a play about it. I'm considering writing a play about the last few years politically, like a sort of history play, really, because by the time it'll be on, which will be a couple of years, it would be sort of like looking back at this moment in time, although I think it's very much not over. It might be over locally within the Labour Party, which I hope it is, but it certainly isn't over in terms of the growth of anti-Semitism worldwide, which continues to sort of spiral. But the weird thing about anti-Semitism is that it does have this right-wing and left-wing thing going on. And people, I think that's what people are confused about with it. And the real reason for that is complicated. It goes back centuries to the fact that Jews have always had racist myths associated with them, and money, and associated with them, and power, which are all things that the left have seen like, well, we're against. Obviously, we set our stall up against people who have money and power. And so there's a sort of crossover where people still assume that has something to do with Jewish privilege, Jewish control, and all the rest of it. But then there's Israel getting in the mix of all that, and I think this what people have talked about a lot, which is a kind of horseshoe thing, particularly now in politics, whereby extreme right-wing politics, extreme left-wing politics just start to meet in the middle, and in the middle, in between them, are the Jews. I would say that's where Jew hatred sits, in the middle of that. In the middle of all that. Yeah. But what I was going to say was about trolls. Just like talking about that. I tell you, it's a very interesting thing about trolls, because I am doing a show about them, right? And the show isn't just about, here's someone who said something nasty to me, and here's a funny thing I said in response, although that was the starting point. Right. The starting point of my show about trolls was, ever since I've been on Twitter, which is now 11 years.
Is it really been that long?
Yeah, I was an early joiner of that. I remember being told by the journalist India Knight, who I know. She said, well, there's lovely new website. It's really great. It's like a lovely cocktail party, she said, with all your loveliest people and all your friends in it. And now it's been in that gate crash, that cocktail party, hasn't it? Yeah, by Nazis and Stalinists. And, they've drunk too much. It's all gone off.
And they won't leave.
They won't leave. And it's really like not a lovely place to be in many ways, although I still think it's got stuff to recommend it, actually. But my starting point was, when I started to get slagged off on it, was, these people are essentially hecklers. I'm a comedian, so I'm not going to ignore them. I'm not going to do this don't feed the trolls thing. I'm going to try and draw them out, put them down, and make fun of them. And I did that quite a lot and still do it. Certainly not all the time anymore, because there's too many of them. There's too many of them. And also I think there is some value in ignoring some of it. And the show isn't just about that. The show is about, why is everyone so angry? What does this anger mean? What does it mean that we can't have any kind of rational conversation without people going mad, and the tribalism and all the rest of it? And also it's something else, the show, which is a diary, because I've been on Twitter for 10 years talking about growing old, talking about anti-Semitism, talking about Brexit, all the stuff that's happened over the last 10 years. I've put that up on a notice board, thoughts about that, and I can go back to them now and say, this is what I thought in doing that, and blah, blah, blah. And it becomes a show partly about that as well. But what I was going to say was that my initial reaction, and it still would be about right, is that when someone slags you off, because a lot of people said to me, both about the show and in general about my process with them, is, but doesn't it upset you when someone slags you off? And the truth about that would be yes, and it's always hurtful. Yeah. But I find it not just like I've bested the troll if I've thought of something funny to say in reaction to them. I find actually in the moment of doing that their abuse feels to me mentally like it becomes something else. It becomes a feed line.
Right.
And in so doing, it's kind of healing. I find it. It's like, not always, obviously, sometimes, and in the show, some of the darkest bits of the show, because it does get very dark, I just show some really unpleasant abuse and say, I couldn't do anything with this. It was just incredibly upsetting. I had to show it to my wife and cry, essentially.
Yeah.
But, so the show doesn't shy away from that. At the same time, I do genuinely believe that if you can be hurt, but then a second later think, material, I know how to make this funny, it isn't just I've scored a little victory. It actually makes you feel I've healed to some extent the wound caused by this abuse, because it feels like something else now. I mean, as a comedian, it almost feels like, on the best ones, like, I'm quite glad that person threw that at me, because now I've thought of something funny to say. Do you know what I mean? So from that point of view, I think it's constructive.
It was such an interest when I was reading up on it today. It was such an interesting take on it. Like you just said, they're hecklers.
Yeah.
And treating them as such. And because my Mrs. Jade she gets abuse all the time because of her size and her looks and whatever else. And you get protective being the partner.
Yes.
And so I used to jump and go, "Who's this prick? What are you saying?
Yes.
Do you want to start slagging me off, mate?"
Right.
And then Jade was like, "I appreciate that." She goes, "But that doesn't help either." And then she's like, "And it's not going to help you, is it? Because you're just going to be." I wasn't even using it in a productive way. I was literally using it as like someone in a pub had called my missus a fat bird.
But that's interesting, Rich, that because I would say that's the natural response. The natural response is upset and anger. But what I think is that then you need to step back from that response and think, how would I react to this in a club? And think like, okay, what I do in a club is essentially improvisational, which is to say someone said something and I'm going to go with it. I'm going to say yes and to this, right? So, to choose a very simple example, something that was quite hurtful, right? Someone on Twitter had said something about reading something about me, and someone else said, the only thing I want to read about you is your obituary.
Wow.
Right? And I said, oh, well, at least I'll get one, eh?
Yeah.
Right? Meaning you won't. Right? But what I've done by doing that is say yes to him. Yeah, I'm fine with what you've said, but let's build on it and see where we end up, And Brilliant. That's essentially what I do with all of them, unless it's so absurdly racist or absurdly abusive that I think I can't do anything with that, and maybe I am platforming the wrong people. And the other thing is bots, which is a whole other thing. It's like, sometimes you think, oh, no, wait a minute, this isn't even a real person.
No.
It's just someone who's paid to create. They're not machines, by the way. When I say bots,
no, they're people hiding behind.
Yeah, people who've got 27 sock puppet accounts who are paid for some reason by Vladimir Putin to abuse you and me and Jade, and I don't know why. I still don't know how that
crazy
helps
world we live in.
Putin take over the world. It confuses me. How does it work? I mean, I know Spectre are clever, but really,
I was about to say it's a different film, isn't it?
Yeah, it is
when we were kids and they send the robots off to fight battles. Now it's someone in a bra saying, "All right, fatty."
Yeah.
What?
No, exactly. I don't get it. The only thing I vaguely know about that is that a lot of those people, or at least whoever's controlling them, and it's not just one thing, it's not just Putin, it's also Trumpists and it's North Koreans and it's whoever it is, they are interested only in spreading hate and anger and rage. And I don't know what the ultimate purpose of that is, except
to divide us, maybe. Which what Twitter seems. Although not everybody's on Twitter, are they? The percentages are very low.
No, that's true. But one of the things I talk about in the show from that point of view, because you could say, well, who cares? It's just people slagging each other on a website. But unfortunately, it's very archetypal in culture, I think. I think what Twitter has done is set up a sort of model of behaviour which seems to be spreading out far beyond the computer screen.
Yes.
And you can see it. You can see it outside Parliament, inside Parliament, just in the way that there's this ridiculous anger that seems to infect everything.
Yeah,
and I personally think it started there, even though Twitter itself only has 300 million global followers, it still seems to...
It still spreads out,
Well, as far as I can make
seems
out.
To be,
And there's a lot of influential people on Twitter. People say, again, like, oh, trolls, does they matter? Yeah, one of them's president of the United States. One of them, an absolute archetypal troll, the way he is on Twitter, like capital letters.
Oh, man.
Rage, conspiracy theory. I mean, he's like a total. He should be called, at Donald 1734572. You know what I mean? Because he seems like a total bot, but also he's normalised a whole lot of other things, including, being absurdly obscene about. Obscenely angry about people and. Like reacting furiously to everything, stupidity. He's still, everything about him. So it's not as fringe discourse we're talking about here. We're talking about something.
He's at the core of it almost, isn't
Well,
it?
I think he's certainly very important in it because I think people say to me, I don't know that much about the history of social media, but people say to me that Twitter was actually sort of dying as a platform, and then Trump revitalised it kind of single-handedly.
Wow.
Well, I mean, he wasn't trying to.
No.
But that's just part of what happened to it.
But it would have someone in his position acting like he's talking about bobbing accounts. Like the way he's like, if he was in like a normal office job, he'd have been binned.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because nothing about Twitter is that it people talk about it as being less, and it certainly is less. People are less on it than Facebook. It's less current than Instagram and all that, whatever. But when there's a big thing, it's always starting on Twitter.
Yep.
So like the diversity row at the moment about the Oscars and the BAFTAs, that's Twitter.
Yep.
Whatever it is, good or bad, the movements start on Twitter. And I think that's because it's easier than all the others. You can just say very quickly one thing and it can build very quickly into a big thing where lots of people are saying the same things. And that's, as I say, good and bad. But one thing about Trump is that it's interesting that like the mob can bring down almost anyone now. Almost anyone. Everyone looks over their shoulder all the time.
Absolutely.
Now. Everyone's worried about saying the wrong thing. It's a big problem for comedians because comedy is about saying the wrong thing. And we're all worried about it. And no statement is made now without a sense of like, oh, fuck, is this the one? Is this the one? Let's go, blah, blah. Except by people who are so powerful that they can't be brought down. And that would be Donald Trump. Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, a couple of others, because there's no question that, could you imagine if he was slightly lower down or if he was just like an actor and said some things he'd said, he'd have been cancelled a long time ago. But he can't be cancelled.
No. He can't even... So I talked about this today. I actually did a tweet about it today saying about, do you remember when Donald Trump was going to be impeached? What happened to that? Now we're talking about this thing with Harry and Meghan.
Yes.
It's been pushed to the front because it's a distraction, obviously, from all the other mad shit that's going on. Yeah. And it's funny to see someone like Trump just be above it all. Yeah. He can say whatever he likes and it's terrifying, to be honest. Yeah. When you see these people, you go, wow, what is he going to take? Because then his supporters are so supportive as well.
But I think what it takes is quite, in a way, it's sort of simple. I think that you have to be able to be sacked.
Yeah.
Right? You have to have someone who watches Twitter or whatever it might be and thinks, oh, bloody hell, I'm going to sack that person. Yeah. I mean, I was talking about this yesterday about a girl who, and this is a complicated subject, actually. Right. I was talking to a theatre director who was telling me about a production of The Colour Purple, and in The Colour Purple, which was on like last year, a young woman who's 21 or something turned out that a woman of colour had, when she was 14, because her dad's a big evangelical preacher, had posted on Facebook all these homophobic, homosexuality is a sin Facebook posts, right? And there's a big fuss about it, and eventually she lost the job in The Colour Purple and whatever and all that kind of stuff. And so the key point about all that is it's very complicated because it was a woman of colour this was happening to, and you could tell that they were conflicted about it. But at the end of the day, the decision is with the people in power who were producing that show. No one is able to do that with Trump. No one can decide, overall we think this person should be sacked for the things he said. The only people who could do that are the American people, and unfortunately... They love him. Well, a few of them still do love him, But it's that blind... We were talking about this just now, before you arrived. We were talking about this blind adoration for people that, like with Michael Jackson, people won't listen to the stories that have come. They go, no, I really love listening to Thriller. I'm now going to make a point of not listening to the stories. Yes, well, I talk about them on my show. Right. Because I've been trolled by them. Because some of the times, I've got into quite a few Twitter storms. Nothing so far that's been the absolute really big ones that you know about, but I've ended up in quite a few sort of locally, and one of them was through tweeting about losing Neverland,
Right.
which seemed to be like so obviously like these people are telling the truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
So no question that they're telling the truth. But I tweeted something about that, and next thing I knew, they were coming at me, the Michael Jackson's innocent trolls. Wow. I've also upset the McCann trolls.
Wow.
Right, who are incredible. These are incredible people. I mean, again, I don't know how many of them are real.
No.
Again, I start to think, like, are you real or are you just spreading madness for some weird political purpose?
Like you say, like that, they're trying to divide us. Like you say, even though it's on a website, it does spread out into real life. So that's obviously...
and also, it isn't just about politics.
No.
That's the thing, is that I think a lot of the time, the people who are controlling the trolls, that what they're interested in is muddying and confusing your idea of what truth is.
Yes.
And that can include the McCanns, and it can include Michael Jackson and all the rest of it. But the ones who are real, it's a very hard word to use, but the ones who are real, you're absolutely right, is they are not able to contain the idea that their hero did that.
Yes.
And so therefore, they have to convert the world and truth to their truth. That's the thing, is 30 years ago, if someone had said to me, there's a technology going to come along that's going to allow everyone to see into everyone else's life, everyone's opinions, everyone's thoughts, I would think, well, that'll increase the sum total of truth in the world. Surely everything will be real, true. And it's done the opposite.
Yeah.
Because, of course, people don't tell the truth, they tell their truth.
Yes.
Which, in their case, is that Michael Jackson couldn't possibly have been a predatory paedophile. What are you talking about? There's absolutely no way that can happen. Have you not heard Man in the Mirror? It's wonderful. That's their basic position, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, listen to that music. He can't possibly have done it.
And then you watch the documentary and you're like, he had a bed in every building in his fairground, and you're like, why would you do that?
Yes.
Why would we have a bed in the ghost house?
And was there in the actual fairground?
It was like, in his Neverland, whatever it was. It's like he had a station. There was like a train station.
Yeah, yes.
There was a bed in that, and then there was a bed somewhere else.
Okay, what seems odd about that to me is that, I mean, I am not a paedophile, but I would have thought that even a paedophile probably doesn't need to necessarily express their desires everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like he's got...
It's a lot of land.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also, he had that thing, like both of them said, didn't they, that he had this strange system, which always struck me as being kind of Heath Robinson-y, like this bells. Like it sounded like it wasn't like a proper alarm system. It was like constructed by one of the people who probably worked for him, who's a bit fairy tale of like bells and
strings. It was a bit Famous
strings.
Five, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It was that if someone walked along and he was there with a young boy, then all these bells would ring,
and then he would just.
Well, that was an alarm system.
Yeah. But you think he's a multi-millionaire? Have a proper... I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that you should put an alarm system in at all when you're a païdophile. No. But if you were going to be a paedophile... surely
you could have a better alarm system than that.
There's some bells that you got from Wix.
Yes, no, exactly. But I think in a way it's consistent. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. With Michael's own idea of like the Wonderland.
Yes.
Like even a man is going to come along and see that I'm a paedophile alarm system has to be a bit Christmassy.
I'm going to make... Gonna make it like Home Alone.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna make it like Home Alone because Macaulay's here anyway.
Oh God! See, we're making connections.
Yeah,
see?
Exactly. Anyway, what I was going to say, like, I think they're a long way back. I was going to say that I have a couple of times recently, particularly recently, I think, having been absolutely someone who kind of decided, no, this is how I deal with trolls. I sort of like it. I found a way of doing it. It's like hecklers. It's funny, people, blah, blah, blah. I've started to get quite down about it.
Yes.
And I think that's partly just to do, it's to do just with like my own mental health, which is changes all the time. But also it's to do with volume. So in the old days, I think if I got trolled, I don't know, 20 times a day, I could sort of go in there with my, lightsaber wit and sort of like deal with them. But now it can be 2,000,
Wow.
And then you think, I can't deal with them all, and I'm going to have to sort of, and I feel slightly defeated by this, I'm going to have to ignore it, or I'm going to have to just look at, my people who follow me or whatever. I mean, interesting enough, Danny Baker, here's an interesting thing about Danny Baker, is that he told me, before all that happened to him, he told me, I assume I'm getting slagged off, so I don't look at my notifications.
Oh, yeah,
I just follow the people I follow, I was one of the people he follows, so he knows what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I sometimes have a chat to you or whatever, but I just assume people are slagging me off. So I don't. Why would anyone want to do that? Because of course. You're in the cyber stocks. Of course, people are saying horrible things about you
absolutely.
if you're well known. So that's interesting because it must have taken him a while, tragically, to discover that things had gone very wrong for him when that happened, because he wouldn't have been checking it. He'd have seen himself trending and thought, fucking hell.
Oh, God, yeah.
That would have been bad. But, I mean, my point is that I feel like, I don't like it if I think, like, oh, God, I'm being slagged off by... I mean, like the other day that happened, and it was a Corbynista thing, right? Which was, again, like, it's just a fucking joke, really. There was footage just after the Soleimani thing of the Iranian parliament, and they were all chanting in Persian, "Death to America," right? And I said, I think I could just make out a brief modulation into "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn," right? And you know what that was really a joke about? It wasn't even really a joke about Corbyn supporting the Iranians. No. It was really a joke about the fact that people had alerted me to the fact that at New Year they'd played Three Lions at the London fireworks display. Okay. And I thought, oh, that's great, whatever. Yeah, but then I noticed that "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn" was trending, and it was because the Corbynites had decided that everyone was singing "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn," which they weren't. They were just singing along to Seven Nations Army. And I thought, I mean, there's a good example of bending the world, like you were talking about with the Michael Jackson thing. I listened to it a couple of times, they're clearly not. They're just going, duh, 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 duh. That's what they're doing. So really, it was just a joke about how people will hear "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn" in whatever they want to hear in. But then suddenly, there were over 1,000 responses to that, and I would say 90% of them will be horrible. Yeah, and so, because they want to vent and say horrible things. Yeah. So like you said, they manipulate everything so they can go, all right, now I'm outraged now, and I'm going to give it to you. Yeah, because they really just want to give it to you. They do, but also, I mean, something I do also say in the show. Sorry about saying that quite a lot. But something I say in the show quite a, is, and actually this is in relevance to the Michael Jackson thing, is that. So, people talk about silos on social media, right? So, if you believe in Brexit, you only really hear other people who believe in Brexit and vice versa or whatever. And that's a problem, right? But actually, there are people who very much go out of their silos, including the Michael Jackson people, because my Michael Jackson thing started when a woman who's a Michael Jackson innocent person found a tweet that I'd done from 2009. Bloody hell. In 2019, right? Yeah. It was a joke about him dying just after he died. It was a joke about how he maybe had been killed by the stress of 50 dates in the O2. I think he thought it was a big oxygen tent, right? That was the joke. It was in 2009. And then she slags me off in 2019. Brilliantly, a bloke underneath wrote, well, that escalated slowly, which I really love. Right? Yeah. But I think, what that woman is doing, because she is searching the internet for things that offend against her identity, because what she wants is to be offended against so that she can confirm her identity in anger. And that's what it is, isn't it? It's that confirmation. Yeah, it's like, if I get really angry about this, that proves what a big Michael Jackson fan I am. Yeah. This is it. It's all about the person, isn't it? It's all about them trying to, because everybody, I think, human beings want to feel important. Like when you look at the universe and everything around it, we're just a speck in amongst it all. Yeah. When human beings have this weird, we need to feel important, and we need to feel that I'm more important than you, which is where all this sort of seems to stem from. Yes, but I think there's something else as well, which particularly now, which is about. As feeling important and there's identity, a very connected thing. Yes. They're possibly the same thing at some level. But what I mean is that the way to feel important isn't just abstract. It's you feel important because you think, well, this is who I am. I'm very left-wing, or I'm a big Michael Jackson fan, or I'm very believe in Brexit. That's who I am. Yeah. So we're not what we eat, we're what we believe. Yes. Right? And actually, I don't think that's true. I think we're much more complex than our beliefs, and sometimes our beliefs are all mixed up and we're all confused, whatever. But it changes, doesn't it? It changes all the time. Exactly, it changes with time. And also sometimes you hear something and think, oh, my belief's not right, or whatever, if you're a thinking person. But sadly, people don't want that, because that's confusing for them and confusing for this thing of like, I need to say, here I am. Yes. And if I want to say here I am, I need to have a very, very concrete, clear identity, and that is hashtag Michael Jackson is innocent. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is. Absolutely. Yeah. Wherever your beliefs, that's you. That's you. And I'm not. And so therefore, if he does a joke about that, and this is very much in my show, is like, this is a joke. It's clearly a joke, and yet all these people got very angry about it. So what's happening is a joke about, say, Nigel Farage looking like he's having a piss becomes an attack personally on a Brexit Party supporter.
Yes. Yeah,
and it could be anyone having a piss.
Yeah.
But that's it's a joke, because he looked, when he turned around at the European Parliament, he looked like he was having a piss. So I did a joke about that.
Yeah.
And really, it's not a joke. I mean, much forgetting about my politics, not really a joke at the expense of Brexit Party members.
No.
But they don't care anymore.
No, jokes. The thing about that's the thing, is it, about jokes? They want, because they're looking for the outrage, and if you make a joke against someone that they like, then they straight away they're like, well, you clearly are anti them, and you're anti us, and you're anti this, and you're anti that. And you're like, no, I'm a comedian.
Yeah,
I'm making a joke about this.
Yes.
I've made a joke about them the other day.
Exactly. But I genuinely think it is dangerous for comedy. I mean, in a different way from all the free speech people, because I don't quite believe that either. I don't quite believe in the sort of Andrew Doyle, free speech is being stopped by the woke or whatever. I think it's much more complicated than that.
Yeah.
I think what we're talking about is much more of an issue, which is that people's identity, whatever you're making a joke about, whatever side of the political spectrum it might be, you'll find someone who thinks that this offends against my identity.
And then that goes back to that.
And it'll be about that, and they're not looking at what the actual joke is.
No.
Because what's the target in this joke? And they don't care. It includes the words that trigger me off.
That's it. And and then that goes back to like we were saying just now about them, that justifies who they are. Yeah. Which is what they're really searching for in the first place, isn't it?
But in terms of mental health, to get back to what this podcast is about, unquestionably do sometimes get down about it.
Do you, because you get so many responses now, because of who you are, do you have to put time in your, put aside time, do you say like, right, today, all right, I'm going to spend the next hour on Twitter? Like, do you have to put stuff, or do you just sort of like flick on it and suddenly you're lost?
No, it's an addiction.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to mental health, I'm definitely addicted to it. And I have made some kind of, comedy capital out of that. I think I'm someone, I'm from an immigrant background, and I think I'm always thinking, oh God, how can I transform this somehow into something that actually is going to stop me from starving? And so, I mean, my whole life in a way has been that. It's been like, I want to be able to do what I want to do, but I want to be able to somehow monetize.
That's
that,
right, absolutely.
And Twitter's definitely become part of that for me, because I spend a lot of time on it, and there's a lot of funny stuff that happens on it. But I am definitely quite addicted to it, and I think it is a problem. Partly as well, just like my wife isn't on it. It's not on any social media.
Right,
She's the opposite of me in many respects. She's a very, very private person.
Yeah.
I'm an absurdly public person, not in the sense that I want to be on everything, but when I am on something like this, my tendency is just I completely open my, mind. I don't inhibit myself, because I can't really have a sort of on the spectrum problem with inhibiting myself. And she's the opposite. So that's good in the way it works for us in many ways, but it also means that she basically doesn't like me being on Twitter all the time.
No.
But also not just from like, oh, you're not present in the family, whatever, and we're spending all our time telling my son not to be on screens, you're fucking that up, you fucking idiot, which is totally fair.
Yeah.
But also, when the Twitter storms have happened, she can see it's starting to really bring me down.
Of course, yeah. Then
she's like, "Why are you doing this?" And sometimes I don't know what the answer to that is.
Like you say, it's that addiction, isn't it? It's like when you see someone that's addicted to booze or whatever, and you'd see the damage that it's doing to them, and you love that person, and it's a very similar thing. I know people go, "It's just a website." You go, "No, it's more than that." Like you say, it is an addiction, and it does become problematic.
Well, I think for comedians, it's difficult not to be on it. Partly because it sells tickets, unquestionably, but also a more deep thing, which is it feeds a need in me to have an audience at all times.
Yes.
If I think of a joke at 3:00 in the afternoon, I can't go and do a gig at 3:00 in the afternoon to express that joke, but I can put it on Twitter, and if I get 6,000 likes, I feel I've got the big laugh that I wanted with that joke, and that, as a comedian, is a brilliant thing. But it's addictive.
Yes, absolutely.
And then someone slags off the joke, because one thing that is I've also noticed, and do also talk about in the show, is that it's such a win-lose game, because the game is how many likes can I get, how many retweets, but the more of them you get, the more hate you will get.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely the case. The more successful a tweet is, the more I just will see it coming. As soon as one's like got more than about 1,000 likes, you've got I think wait for it, and then it'll be like people really hating it, including always people saying, no one else thinks this. Like, it's just got 1,000 likes.
Someone does.
Yeah, someone clearly does. The maths are quite obvious.
The numbers are there.
Yeah,
What do
exactly.
you want?
Yeah.
But again, it's these fact deniers. They're just like, no, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
Because But Joe Rogan, love him or hate him, what he said a really interesting thing where he just said he'll tweet and just drop his phone, won't even look at it.
Right.
He's like, so he gets it out there.
Yeah.
He's like, I want to say a thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm not going to look at the reaction.
Yes. Well, that's sort of what I was saying about Danny Baker until it went wrong for him. And I sometimes, I'm moving towards that.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, without wishing to get too detailed about stupid old Twitter, I've noticed that what I do sometimes now is I'll post a joke or whatever, and then instead of looking at notifications, I'll just stick on my page and see what it's getting.
Okay.
Right. And then if it starts to get, I mean, the likes and the retweets are one thing. If it starts to get loads and loads of responses, written responses, then I know there's loads of hate. Right? Virtually, that's where the hate is. You know, people who've bothered to respond in detail to something you've said. Unless it's sometimes, I mean, and this is the upside of Twitter. You know, you start a thread about, I mean, I had this big thing about breakfasts. When I was on tour, I was posting pictures of my breakfast.
Yeah, I saw that.
Because I found it impossible not to have a full English breakfast when I'm on tour. And I was trying not to have it because I think this doesn't do me any good, but it's what's available.
Yes.
Every time I go down to the Marriott, Swansea, or wherever I'm staying, that's what's available because I'm touring in Britain. And how do I not have this?
Yeah.
Once it's there, who's not going to have sausage, bacon, and eggs and beans? Do you know what I mean? And so I was posting that, trying to say, stop me. And then people started talking in detail about the architecture of every plate that I had put together, because it was always me putting it together from a buffet, and how it was wrong because the eggs were touching the beans, or whatever it might be.
I said that to someone else. I said, his eggs are touching the beans.
Yeah, people very upset about eggs and beans touching. Like, apparently that's illegal.
You can't have bean juice on your eggs, David.
Yeah, no. I probably shouldn't say this, but anyway, the OCD nature of the plating of the full English breakfast. There's a fault line in the British public. People are very, very concerned about it, and things like that. You can get loads of responses, and they're brilliant. They're actually brilliant. You know, people like, or actually, let's show this in the show. Like, there's all these brilliant responses, and then one person just screenshots my sausage and eggs and bacon and says, "All I see is death." Which is true.
It's brilliant.
He's right about that.
Yeah. That's nice that it inspired that response.
No. So you can, sometimes it means that you've started a thread of comedy.
Yes.
And I like that. And you feel like the conductor of a huge comedy orchestra, and that's lovely.
Yeah.
But most of the time, if you see loads and loads of responses, it means that, you know, you've upset some hornet's nest and they're out to get you.
Your next episode is a podcast for people bursting into their 40s, 50s and beyond.
Talking to people like Laura Dodsworth.
One thing I didn't consider at all with manhood and slam in my first shoot, and I thought, what the fuck am I doing? I was on my knees in front of a man I don't know at all, photographing his penis. I thought, oh, I'm going to be doing this 100 times.
And people like Sober Dave.
When you give up drinking, you feel everything. You know, all your emotions come out because before you'd numb them before. So all of a sudden it's like, what is this? How am I going to deal with this? You know, before it'd be, I just get drunk and it'd go away.
I'm Amy.
I'm Louise.
Join us for your next episode.
Buy your favourite podcast app.
Made by darkhorse.digital.co.uk. Shooting, live streaming and podcast production.
The thing with Danny Baker, because it was the outrage was massive, and I remember, and I was saying to someone, like, no, he's used that picture before, and I remembered, like, Danny Baker has been a part of my life since I was a kid. I remember being on the 6 o'clock show or whatever it was years ago when I was a kid, on like a Friday night show or whatever it was. And so he's always been there, and you go, you would have known by now if he was racist in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, but I think the problem with it is, I am absolutely sure that he did not mean to post that in a racist way. But the problem is that I think we live in a world where impact is more important than intent now. And also what I would say, particularly as a Jew, is it is not my place to tell black people, to tell people of colour, that whether or not they think something is racist.
Oh, of course,
I think if they found that racist, and if the impact of it was racist, and certainly it could be taken as such, then I'm not going to tell them it isn't. No, really, because I have enough of people with me saying this is anti-Semitic, saying to me, no, it's not. I'm thinking, like, well, how do you know? How do you know?
Yeah,
how do you know? Because you've never experienced this.
Right.
So on a personal level, I absolutely think Danny Baker. I know Danny Baker is not a racist, but I'm not. That doesn't mean that I'm going to deny the experience of people who found that.
Yeah, you're
racist,
right. Because I did a couple of times. I commented, I went, no, he's used that picture before, and you're right. They came out and went, well, that's not the issue. Yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Actually, like you just said, oh yeah, shit. Who am I to say what's offensive, what isn't, what is racist?
And actually, the thing at the moment with Meghan Markle, I think it's a ridiculous culture war around it. Yeah. But I'd say again, people of colour feel that it's absolutely their lived experience, but I personally agree anyway. I think the fact that you can't find a specific or many specific examples as the various white men and white who are saying no, it's not racist. She's been made into a villain. Yes. She's been made in very quickly. And I think it crosses over with lots of other things. So it's definitely racist. It's also misogynist because she's an older woman. She's older than Harry. Right? She's divorced. She's an actress. So that goes back to the 19th century attitudes to these things. And it fits a story of sort of what we want really. Because what they really want is story. They want pantomime. And Kate's the good wife and she's the bad wife. And certainly race is in that mix. And certainly her being older. There's all sorts of ways in which they want to play that out, and it's got nothing to do in a way with who the real person is. No.
Someone put a thread up yesterday, and they said this is why this is racist, and they put different
images of Kate and those are amazing.
And
they are amazing.
Wow,
they are amazing. I mean, I think it's racist, and I think it's other things as well. Yes. So I think it's the decision, unconscious decision, for various reasons, including skin colour, why the press have decided, no, we're going to make her into the villain. Yeah, into the villain, and because they don't want happiness. No. The last thing they want is happiness.
There's no money to be made in peace, is there?
And it all worked out. That's the end of the fucking story. They don't want that. They love all these people outraged. Again, it's outrage. Yeah. All these, particularly these kind of conservative commentators, outraged about it. They are so happy about the outrage. Yeah, that they're able to write about.
But we were talking about, because all the while, Prince Andrew they go, oh, you're not having a birthday party this year. And it kind of gets pushed out of the way. And we were talking about poor Princess Eugenie. Yeah. She's having a big wedding, and they're like, unfortunately, you're going to have to just have a low-key affair. And that poor girl's not done anything.
No, I know. I do feel sorry for her. Yeah. But I hardly know who she is. That's the thing. Another thing. Well, there is another thing. I've said this. Actually, something that happens on Twitter as well, is I've said, there was some poll I read about with 37% of people think Harry and Meghan should do this, and 42% think that, and blah, blah, blah. And I sort of seem to have missed out the 87% who don't give a fuck. And a number of people said that should be 92 or whatever, or 94 or whatever. But and then, of course, I got this Twitter thing of saying, well, I noticed that you've bothered to tweet about how you don't care. Oh, yeah. And I was like, yeah, no, I get your point. But we are being told that we care all the time. We are being told by the media all the time that this is a really big issue. And I don't care. No. Not really. I mean, I'm interested in it, and I agree that something really pernicious is going on with the treatment of Meghan Markle. But at some level, I just think it's a bunch of aristocrats from a ridiculously outdated institution that people... Actually, someone was on telly 2 days ago saying something I've never heard before. I thought was a really good thing to say. It was a small thing, and no one really noticed it. But we are told... The royal family, they make a lot of money for this country. A lot of tourists come to this country. Yes. They earn their money, blah, blah, blah. And I've always sort of accepted that. Sort of like, I suppose so. I don't know much about tourism, whatever. Yeah. And a woman was on telly saying, in France, they don't have one. They have loads of palaces. People still go and see the palaces. Right? And she said more people go and see palaces in France than go and see buildings here. Yeah. And she also said a brilliant thing. And she said, and when those people who come here because of the royal family, they don't see the royal family. The royal family don't meet them, right? They just go and hang out outside Buckingham Palace. They don't have to be in there.
So it's just about the buildings.
Yeah, it's a good point, because if we did get rid of the royal family, no one said we're going to burn down all the buildings. No. Because that's what people come and see, isn't it? Windsor Castle, it'll still be there. So
it's a load of bollocks.
It's a load of bollocks.
It is a load of bollocks.
Yeah. It's a load of bollocks, and it is, to some extent, all a confection, to sell newspapers and to convince people that there is meaning in life. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
That's the thing as well, isn't it? It's that there has to be a reason why we're here.
Yes,
there has to be a reason why we're here. Yeah, and depending on what you believe, you might. It's not. We're just here.
I mean, when I do get depressed, because I've had terrible depression over my life, and I don't have it as badly now. It's still there in the background all the time.
Do you know how to deal with it, or do you think that the things that were causing it have gone? Or
I think the things that are causing it were always there, and then got worse. I was very bad in my 30s, and I took a lot of antidepressants, and I was in a lot of therapy and all that kind of stuff. And I think children made a massive difference to me, actually, because I think one of the things, very straightforwardly, that happens with depression is that you ruminate all the time about yourself. You get self-obsessed in a very extreme way, and you can't get out of your own thoughts, and you sort of have to, once you have children, you sort of have to finally see the world from another perspective, which is the key thing, I would say, that you need to do when you're depressed, is like not be in your own head. And that definitely was part of it. I think also like all sorts of things I don't really want to get into about relationships, I sort of sorted out. But I'm talking and all the stuff that is important, and that I was in this thing, Calm. It was a charity that I which is a charity designed for men, specifically for men under 40, who, as I'm sure you know, are the greatest at risk from suicide. I'll tell you the truth about Calm is I had just started taking my daughter, who is my older child, to primary school. And I'd never taken a child to primary school before, and I just was doing it. And literally, third day I'm doing it, a woman comes up to me, and a mum there, and says, "I'm starting this charity, and it's for men and mental health in men. And would you like to be the patron of it?" And my first thought was, "Oh right, so I come to this place every day. If I say no, she's going to be looking at me every day like, you cunt, you uncaring, pretending to be interested in mental health cunt. I'm going to be looking at her eyes every day across the playground. I'm going to have to say yes, aren't I? And God knows what else these parents will be able to get out of me, because I can't escape this, right?" So I said yes. But I am glad I did it, because I think it's now a big... I don't do it anymore because I felt I was too old.
Really?
It's for men under 40. The charity... is specifically, I don't know why this is. It's not like you grow older and everything's fine. No. Start worrying about death. But anyway, men under 40 are the most at risk. And I did it. I started doing it when I was in my 30s. And then I just thought you should have a younger man doing this. It was Professor Green for a while. And I don't know if he still does it or not. But anyway, they provide a helpline and various other things, support for men. A lot of time, to be honest, working class men who are not used to the idea that what you do when you get depressed is deal with it by going to therapy and asking for antidepressants. Their experience is to just be quiet and silent and to kill themselves is the truth, or to attempt to do so. And that's what Calm tries to help with, and is good with dealing with that. There was a reason why I brought that up. Oh yes, which was to do with what we just said about Harry and Meghan, which is I think that I'm sort of an upbeat person at some level, but there's a part of me that can get very bleak. Right? And I'm sure you're like that.
Same,
as well,
absolutely
right?
the same. Yeah.
Right? And I sometimes do think, with all the noise of this stuff, like, is this just here to make us convinced that there is a purpose to life? There are things to think about that are not just we are meaningless, we will die soon. That seems to be. Isn't that what that's for?
There is. That seems to be that we have that unquenchable thirst to. That's why we shoot ourselves off into space.
Yeah.
That's why we do all these things. We go into the ocean.
For significance.
Because we're trying to. Yeah. It was like we have to prove that we are important.
Yeah.
And there is a reason that we're here.
Yeah.
It's not just a case of being a chemical reaction.
No.
That got out of hand and then we were suddenly formed and.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote a play that was just on in Soho Theatre called God's Dice.
Yeah.
And it was a play about religion and physics. And in it, a girl, a student, comes up with sort of equations that seem to prove the existence of God. And without giving too many spoilers, Alan Davis, who plays the main character in it, who's her teacher, who's a physics lecturer, becomes essentially wooed partly by her, but also by the idea that there is a meaning to life, having been a physics teacher. And one thing physics will tell you is that there isn't. Right? If you understand it properly, that there really isn't. It's all just numbers, whatever. Yeah. And he's married to a woman who is like a Richard Dawkins sort of figure. She's like a big celebrity atheist. And it was very interesting, the reactions in the audience, because my voice in the play is her voice, is the Richard Dawkins atheist voice. That was totally my voice. But there were loads and loads of people who came away from that play, including Quentin Letts, who gave it 4 stars in Sunday Times, who's a believer and, quite right-wing and all sorts of things I'm not. And he just thought it was a huge plea for faith and meaning in a sort of cold secular universe. And it wasn't, but having said that, I am totally somebody who believes that you can take what you like from a work of art and it's up to you.
Absolutely, that's what, yeah.
And in a way, I was pleased about it. Whatever you think about Quentin Letts, I was pleased about it because I thought, well, I wanted to write the religious girl in it as a genius, right? And as someone who, fucking hell, she might have come up with things to prove that miracles happen and that God exists and whatever. And my point was, we all yearn for that. Like in the play, there's a bit where there's a quote from this imaginary book that the atheist has written called The Belief System, which is sort of her version of the God delusion. And it begins with her saying, a good friend of mine once said to me, "Don't you want to believe in God?" And I said, yes, desperately. That's how I know he doesn't exist, right? And I really believe that. Yeah. I really believe that. It was actually Omid Jalili who said that to me. We did a movie called The Infidel.
Yes.
And he was in a and Omid is a Baha'i and a believer. And he said that to me. He said, "Don't you want to believe in God?" I said, "Yeah, that's why I know he doesn't exist, because everyone wants to fucking believe in God. That's why we've projected him into the skies." That's what we've done.
It would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
I would absolutely. And the older I get, the more open I am. I mean, I think that maybe that's like you say. The older you get, so the nearer to death you get, and so you start to be a bit where you go, "Oh, maybe I need to sort of hedge my bets a little bit."
Right. See, I don't think I'm thinking that. I don't think actually, Frank Skinner, who is a believer, once said to me, or not to me actually, I think to other people, he said there are no atheists in foxholes. He said, meaning that as soon as you're frightened of death, you start believing in God. And I kind of think like, maybe you do. Doesn't mean that God exists. That means you're frightened. Yeah. That's what that means. And, they do all sorts of things when you're frightened that don't logically have any basis in objective truth. But I can't imagine that, and trust me, I have no, I hate death. Death is a real bummer, I think. And the closer I get to it, the less I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I've not as yet. I've not really had anyone close to me pass on yet.
Haven't you?
No, not really.
How old are you?
I'm 47.
And your parents are both
my parents are still there.
Oh, wow.
My grandparents, my nan, I'm close to now. My granddad died when he was 52 in 1977, so I was only 5.
Yeah.
My dad's mum and dad were never really close to them. They were horrible people. And so the only person, the people I'm close to, is still around. So I've yet to go through.
Is your nan still alive?
Yeah.
How old is she?
She's 90.
Right.
She's just gone into a home.
Right.
And I see her because she used to travel the world and she'd be flinging herself all over the place. And now I just see her just sat in this chair and she's just waiting to go. And I find that really upsetting.
Yeah, well, as you may know, I've also done quite a lot of stuff about my dad.
Yeah,
his dementia. Although he wasn't like that. He is much more like that now. But my whole shtick, and I did a documentary about it as well, about my dad, is he's really not like that. He's, he had this thing called Pick's disease, that's what he was diagnosed with, which is symptoms include things like swearing and uninhibited behaviour and rage and laziness and all things he was like already. Right? all things. I think the joke was I said to the doctor, "Sorry, is this a disease or have you just met him?" Right? Because it was literally just my dad's. It was Colin Baddiel's disease he seemed to get, right? Because he was always that, like the most furious, most lazy, most. I actually very much loved my dad, but he wasn't a good dad. No, he's a good bloke, but he was not a good dad at all. Yeah. No, and that's still what he's like, even though he's much more in the throes of latter dementia now. Okay. So he's most of the time he's pretty quiet and whatever. But he is still in there. Actually, the other day. He had to go to hospital the other day. And I wasn't there, his carer took him to hospital. But basically, one of his eyes has started to droop and we were worried it might be a stroke. Yeah, so the carer told me that the doctor was tapping at his face and the doctor said to him, "Does that hurt?" And my dad said, "If you carry on doing that, it will do."
So there he is, he's still there.
He's still in there. Yeah, he's still in there. So that I love that because it suggests that there's some sort of life to him. But you're right, at some point you're just waiting for death.
Yeah, and it upsets me to see it, and even worse for you, like you say, you see your dad just kind of floating away.
Yeah,
almost.
Yeah, although you never saw my family show. In a way, my family show, which was actually mainly about my mum's sex life, late mum's sex life.
Well, I was listening to the James O'Brien podcast you did a couple of years ago, and
it's mainly about my mum's affair with a golfing memorabilia salesman. That was mainly what it was about.
And then she started selling They started
she had an affair with a golf memorabilia and then turned her whole life over to golf. I mean, she suddenly became a golf fanatic, having never mentioned golf before.
Not even
and
golf.
Started a business selling golfing memorabilia. She started the same business that the bloke she was having an affair did. So I always thought I must have pissed him off enormously. What does he want a competitor for? Let alone this woman he's shagging, right?
She turns out to be really good at it.
Yeah, well, she was good at it. She had a really good business, Golfiana, which was even the name of his business. She just nicked the name of his business. And my mum was very mad, but she did make a success of it. And the brilliant thing is that my dad somehow never noticed that this was, because my dad was always just a bloke who, went to the pub and ate and just wanted his own, stuff. He didn't take any interest in his wife at some level. So
probably quite happy that she was off.
Well, I think at the end of the day, you know what? I don't actually even know and won't ever know now because my dad won't remember it. In a way that, both halves of that show were about death insofar as my mum died. And the impulse for that show was, I'm not going to be at a memorial service where people make up that my mum was this sort of angel. She was nuts.
That's what you were saying.
She was nuts.
Yeah.
And it erases her again out of existence. If you say she was a lovely mum and she just did everything right in her life, that completely erases who she was. So I'm going to celebrate that she was nuts and behaved completely in the wrong way, and it was sort of brilliant damaging, undeniably damaging, but still sort of brilliant. And it's the same with my dad from a position of life, which is I'm not just going to say, oh, well, he's got dementia, that's the end of him. Look how he's like him in a really strange and mad way with dementia. So it's sort of, the both of them are sort of saying, I'm not going to let death just erase who we are.
Yeah. And then you having kids as well. You mentioned this, and this is very interesting because we sort of look at our parents and go, well, the way they did things was the right way. When you're younger, you kind of, because they're your parents, and then as you get older, you go, actually, no, that's mad.
Yeah, completely mad.
Yeah, like with my kids. Initially, when they were very little, you kind of followed the template of your own parents, and then as you go on, I go, no, actually, that was a bit fucked. That bit, I'm not going to do that with mine. I've found now mine are older. Mine are 22 and 27, and I literally, as we've been talking now, I realise why I've been feeling so depressed lately is because now they've grown up and they're off living their life.
Right.
And they don't need me.
No, I know. That is worrying when that happens.
Yeah, and now I'm like, it's been debilitating.
Has it?
Yeah, because I've just, for the last 20 odd years, I've been a dad and I've been making sure they're all right and they've got everything they need. Yeah. And now they've gone off.
Yes.
And I'm left with, oh shit, what do I do?
No. Well, that is a thing. I mean, I remember seeing, I can't remember what film it was now. I think it was Boyhood. Do you remember that film, Boyhood?
Yeah, I know of it.
It was about a few years ago, and it was filmed over a long period of time by Richard Linklater, and he used the same actor as a baby.
Yes.
Actually, he filmed it over like 14 years or something.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, Pete Bradshaw, who's the Guardian cinema critic, talked a lot in his review, very painfully, and I thought it was not much people talk about this, about how one thing that's difficult about watching the film as a parent is that thing of the loss of seeing your child grow up.
Yeah.
That even though obviously that's the main thing you're meant to do is shepherd them into adulthood, at some level it's always incredibly upsetting. And with my son, who I talk quite a lot about in my show, because he's turned into an online troll. Well, not an online and offline troll.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, my son is unbelievably, I mean, he's hilarious. He's hilarious, which is his saving grace. But he's 15 and his attitude to me is totally scornful and whatever. But there's no record in him of the incredibly sweet boy he was. With my daughter, that's not really true. My daughter, who's 18, I can see a continuum between her and the lovely girl that she was. With my son, it's like he sort of says, no, fuck off, that person, that sweet kid, fuck him.
That's it.
All right?
Yeah.
Essentially, here I am trampling on that sweet kid's head like a kitten's, right? And you have to live with that, right?
My youngest is the same.
Right.
My youngest is very... When he was a kid, I remember, because we split up with their mum and I split up about 20 years ago now, and so they'd spend every weekend with me. But we never used the kids against each other. I was always there for them, and they were with me a lot. And there'd be times when my youngest he'd stay with me at the weekend, and then he'd be crying his eyes out on a Sunday, go, I just want to stay here, Dad. And so I'd go, all right, well, okay, you can stay, but then we have to be up really early to get you to school, and we have to. But he just wanted to he wanted to be in my skin.
Right.
And now he hates my skin.
He's 22.
He's 22 now.
Oh God, he should be over that by now.
Now he's got. He doesn't.
no.
He doesn't hate it. He doesn't hate it. Do you know what? I did him a grave disservice in because the Christmas presents I got this year were exemplary. He bought me a Tribal Quest on vinyl.
All right, well that's good.
I was like, all right.
That's
so
good.
Yes, the has come out.
Let me tell you a story.
Go on.
About my son. I mean, there's lots of stories about him. Like, for example, trying to sort of get involved in his world. So he plays Fortnite. Actually, he's given up Fortnite to play FIFA now, but he used to play Fortnite all the time. And I thought, I should get involved with that. So I said, no, I'm going to play with you. And he's like, I don't want to do that. I said, no, we're going to do it. So I'm in my room, my study, and I'm synced up with him. I've never played Fortnite before. He's in his room playing it, and we arrive on the. Do you know how Fortnite works? Basically, you parachute down on an island. You've got an avatar, which is some knight in shining armor type person with a big sword or whatever, and we're trying to work together as a team to defeat whoever we're supposed to defeat on the Fortnite island. So I don't know what I'm doing, and he says, "Right, Dad, okay, follow me, run," right? And he disappears somewhere, but he just says, "Keep running, run, Dad." I said, I'm running. And he says, "Run, Dad, run." And he just runs me off a cliff, and I die, right? And then he's basically, right, never play with me again. Right? Have I made that clear? Never play with me again. And he does stuff like that all the time. He's like, always, and he's always hilarious. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell a story.
Go on.
I'm going to tell a story now. I told this on stage the other day, and I thought this one would get a laugh. And I don't even know if I should tell it. And I told it, and it got a massive laugh.
Okay.
So I got approached by a paedophile when I was 11 on the tube, 11 or 12. And that's because my parents not being particularly good parents. They just let me go on the tube in the 70s. And I used to go to Hamleys, right? The
when
toy
you were
shop.
11?
Yeah, Hamleys by myself to look at toys I couldn't afford.
Wow.
I used to do that a lot, just go and look at them, right? How sad and bleak is that? Anyway, so I was telling Ezra this story, and I just sort of wasn't really as a stranger danger thing or whatever, but it was just like, I just thought I'll share this with him. And so I was told him the whole story. I was on the tube, I was a young kid, and it's very horrible, this, and a man sits down next to me. I can still remember he smelled awful and whatever. Crowded tube, sits down next to me and says, "Oh, are you with your parents?" And I say no, and he starts immediately, as whispering in my ear, just asking me stuff about my private parts and about whether I ever think about girl, but I've got any pubic hair, and it's a very horrible thing. I'm really frightened. I remember I went and hid in the next carriage, and he sort of followed me, and it was all really horrible, right? So I was all right. I wasn't abused anyway. It was just like really horrible experience. Anyway, I told that story to Ezra, and he said, "Did you see anything nice in Hamleys?" Anyway, it got a massive laugh, and I was so pleased about it, because when he did it, I laughed and laughed and laughed, and thought, that is the first time I feel I've told that story and felt a great weight lift from me from someone's reaction to it.
And that goes back to what you were saying about on Twitter, when you get a good reaction from the interaction.
Yes, no, that's right. It can feel all right.
Yeah.
So he is he is like that, but at the same time, I totally know what you mean about. There's a weird parents thing of like what happened to the thing that I was looking after, and I still, he's still young enough that I feel I am sort of looking after him. I don't know whether that would be true anymore. He wouldn't think so, but I sort of am. But yeah, I haven't really thought about that. I said at the start or earlier on that one thing that took me out of depression was becoming a parent, and obviously I'll still be a parent, but I won't be that kind of parent that spends all their time worrying and thinking about. It's just what is the world like for them? No, you can't carry on doing that forever. I mean, you sort of do.
Yeah. You're still there. Yeah,
you still do, but it doesn't feel.
It's maybe it's a phase, and because my eldest he always rings me and texts me and just goes, "How's it going, Dad? You're all right?" He lives in Bristol,
right?
So it's we don't see each other very often at all. So maybe he'll find his way.
You haven't got any younger ones with Jade?
No. So, and she doesn't want any either,
right?
So, which is a relief. Yeah. But that's not saying she can't.
No, I never. You brought that up.
No, not you. I'm not saying that was for the benefit of Jade listening.
Okay.
And when does your tour start?
It starts at I'm doing one more warm-up show, which is sold out anyway, so can't come to that. But anyone can come to any one I'm doing from January the 24th. Okay. Goes on till May. I've just put I didn't have a London date. I've just put one in at the Queen Elizabeth Hall on May the 6th. And it's quite a nice tour, I think, because the subject matter isn't particularly nice. It's all about online hatred. Although in the room, it feels quite nice. Because even though I'm dealing with some really horrible stuff, actually the show is quite upbeat. At some level, it says, look, this is horrible stuff. Here's a way of dealing with it. I show examples of people coming in off the back of stuff I've said and building on it and being funny and feeling like, and actually there's sort of something joyful here.
Yes.
There's something to be celebrated here. And in the room, it feels nice. It feels like, no one is left feeling, oh God, the world's so depressing and awful, even though it talks about Holocaust denial, it talks about all sorts of terrible stuff in that. So I'm touring until May the 6th.
Lovely.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been lovely.
Thank you
very
so
much
much
enjoyed it.
for
And you know
coming
what? I came all the way out, terrible rain, Camden, got to do the Auschwitz thing later, and now I'm not depressed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, David. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming down. Really appreciate it. Insane in the Membrane podcast.
Insane in the Membrane is back for another live podcast recording on Sunday the 23rd of February.
I found that through humour, people open up and we have a laugh, and I really appreciate you coming down and doing this.
This is an intimate live show with comedian Rich Wilson and very special surprise guest in front of a small audience at the Pleasance, Islington. In fact, you are so close to the comedians, you could probably lick them.
We can have a laugh while we do it. I think that's what I'm trying to show with the podcast.
January's a struggle for us all, so put yourself something to look forward to in February. Insane in the Membrane live at the Pleasance, Sunday, Feb 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Just £5. Nearest tube, Caledonian Road, Piccadilly line. Dead easy, no excuses.
You did great, Rich.
Thanks, Bob. You
Didn't
did as
you
well.
do great?
Thank you.
Click the link in the show description for this episode on your podcast app or go to pleasance.co.uk.
What do we do now?
I don't know. I think that's it. Thanks for coming. Yeah. Thank you very much. I mean, that must make somebody's day when someone who's a professional comedian acknowledges them. That's a good line, that, mate.
Yeah, but I do. I always do that if someone said something funny. In fact, the other day, do you want to just record this?
Yeah. Can we
record this?
Yeah.
A good example of that, I think, is the Queen put out a statement on Twitter about her. Well, it was actually, I think it's called @ the Royal Family, but they put out the Queen's statement about Harry and Meghan and whatever, which, by the way, included the word family 4 times in 2 sentences. She needs to buy a thesaurus, right? But meanwhile, that wasn't the point I was making. So I retweeted her statement and said that I think it'd be great if she'd put "don't at me." People sometimes put that when they were.
That's it, yeah.
And a bloke called Gora underneath that wrote "don't at one." And I just wrote, Gora's done a better version of my joke.
Brilliant.
Right? There's no getting round it. Yeah.
I think but that's it. When I've done gigs and somebody, at the weekend actually, I was at a gig, and I said something, and a woman off to the side heckled me something that just brought the house down.
Yeah.
And you have to go, that was amazing.
Yeah, but I think that's... in the show, that happens virtually in my show, because there's heckling, and then what I notice is that I'll say something and then someone will build on what I've said, and it won't just be a thing about like trying to crush the heckler. It will just be they'll have run with what I've said, and then that feels like that. It feels like that moment where you're in a club and someone says something genuinely funny and it's really joyful.
Yeah. I live